I'm Ashley Turner, and let me take you straight to that dinner where everything exploded. My mom leaned across the table, eyes locked on me like daggers, and snarled, "Your success means nothing. Your sister is my gold, the most important person in this family." My hand tightened on the napkin, years of bottled-up frustration hitting like a wave. I'd built a tech empire from scratch in Hollywood's startup scene, right here in Los Angeles, while they poured everything into her endless flops. But that night, as they begged for help with their mounting debt, something in me broke for good. I slid the bill across the table, the one for $45,000 they'd racked up, bailing her out again, and said calmly, "Here, take my mother's gold and pay it." The room went dead silent. Dad dropped his fork, staring at the paper like it was poison. My sister shifted uncomfortably, her usual smirk gone. They expected me to cave like always, to hand over cash from my app success to save their sinking ship. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. This wasn't just about money. It was the final nail in a coffin of favoritism that had buried me for years. That silence stretched heavy as lead until I pushed back my chair and stood. They thought I'd fold, but what followed wasn't forgiveness, it was the end. Growing up in our valley suburb home felt like a constant battle I was rigged to lose. From early on, my sister was the center of their world, and I was the afterthought they barely noticed. Truok ki jan voi kau chuyen kwa toi toi muon biet, banjang he luk me giova o than po nao. Toiret vui vi biet, kau chuyen min lan. Ksatoajau comment ben duoin he. That dinner wasn't the start. It was the climax of a lifetime of being sidelined. But telling this now, it's my way of claiming the narrative they never let me have. From as early as I can remember, around 9 years old, my mom made it clear who the priority was. She'd lean in during family dinners at our valley suburb kitchen table and say things like, "Danielle's got that spark, she's my gold." It wasn't just words, it showed in every little action. I came home one day buzzing from winning the school coding contest, clutching a certificate for building a simple game app that impressed the teachers. I rushed in, expecting at least a pat on the back. My dad glanced up from his phone and muttered, "Good job, kid," before scrolling back to work emails. But my mom, she barely nodded already, turning to Danielle. "That's fine, Ashley. But look what Danielle drew today, a concept for a fun drawing app. Isn't she creative?" She printed it out right there and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet, calling the neighbors over to see Danielle's talent. My certificate ended up in a drawer forgotten by dinner. The favoritism hit harder with birthdays. Mine were always practical school books or a cheap backpack, maybe $20 in a card with a quick, "Happy birthday" scribbled inside. Danielle's full-blown parties in the backyard with balloons, a custom cake, and gifts like art kits or new gadgets she hinted at. One year at 11, I saved my allowance for months to buy myself a basic laptop for coding practice. I showed it off at dinner, proud I'd earned it. My mom shrugged and said, "That's responsible, Ashley. But Danielle needs a new tablet for her ideas. She's my gold after all." The next week, they surprised Danielle with the latest iPad complete with accessories. I sat there watching her unwrap it, feeling my own achievement shrink. My dad tried to soften it once, whispering, "You're doing great on your own." But he never pushed back when Mom steered everything to Danielle. It wasn't long before the differences turned into direct conflicts. At 12, I entered a science fair with a project and app prototype that tracked homework assignments, something I coded late nights after homework. I poured hours into it, debugging errors on our old family computer. The day before submission, I left it open to test one last feature. When I came back, the file was gone, deleted. I panicked, searching recycle bin, but nothing. Danielle walked in smirking, saying, "Oops, must have been a glitch." I knew better. She'd been jealous of my focus time on the computer. I rebuilt it from scratch overnight, barely sleeping, and still placed second. At the fair award ceremony, my parents showed up late, just in time for Danielle's art display in the next room. Mom gushed over Danielle's poster. "This is gold pure talent, my ribbon, a quick, nice work," before they hustled us home. That night, I started a secret journal on my laptop documenting every slight: the deleted file, the ignored wins, the constant gold praise for Danielle. It wasn't for revenge. It was proof for myself that I wasn't imagining it. The pattern repeated in small ways that built up. Family outings to the beach or malls in LA always revolved around Danielle's whims. If she wanted ice cream, we stopped. If I suggested a coding workshop downtown, Mom waved it off with, "We don't have time, Danielle's got dance practice." My dad, Robert, would sometimes slip me a few extra bucks under the table saying, "Use this for your tech stuff." But he never confronted Mom. Linda, that's my mom, ruled the house with her favoritism, and he enabled it by staying quiet. I learned early to rely on myself. By 13, I was sneaking to the local library after school to use their computers for free coding tutorials. I'd code simple scripts like a budget tracker for my allowance, feeling a rush when it worked. But at home, Danielle's half-finished drawings got framed in the living room, while my apps stayed hidden on my drive. One evening, after a rough day where teachers praised my math skills but Mom dismissed it as just numbers, I overheard Danielle on the phone with friends. She laughed. "Ashley's project got messed up, total fail. She's so obsessed with computers, it's weird." It stung, confirming she'd deleted my file on purpose. I confronted her quietly in our shared room, asking why. She shrugged. "You always hog the computer. Mom says I'm the creative one anyway." That moment flipped a switch. I stopped sharing my progress, locking my files with passwords. My journal entries grew dates, quotes, even screenshots of chats where Mom texted Danielle my gold emojis, but ignored my messages. The damage was real. It pushed me to code harder, turning hurt into fuel. I built my first real app that year, a note-taking tool, and entered it in an online contest without telling anyone. When I won a small prize, $50, I tucked it away, knowing sharing would just lead to comparison. The favoritism wasn't random. It shaped us differently. Danielle leaned into it, expecting handouts, while I grinded in silence. Holidays amplified it. Thanksgiving dinners where relatives asked about school, and Mom pivoted straight to Danielle's artistic potential. I'd answer about my coding club, but eyes glazed over as Mom said, "Danielle's the star here, she's gold." My dad nodded along, avoiding my gaze. By 14, I was taking online courses on app development, staying up past midnight. One night, debugging a glitch, I realized this wasn't just survival, it was building something they couldn't touch. But the cost showed in small cracks, skipped family events, quiet resentment bubbling. When Danielle bragged about her concepts getting likes on social media, stuff she copied from tutorials, Mom threw her a pizza party. My contest win, silence. It all peaked one weekend when I caught Danielle mocking my journal. I'd left my laptop unlocked for a minute and she snooped, reading entries aloud to herself with a giggle. "Ashley's so dramatic, thinks she's ignored." I walked in, snatched it back, and locked her out. That was the breaking point. I vowed to keep everything separate. No more sharing devices, no more explaining my work. My dad noticed the tension, pulling me aside to say, "Don't be too hard on your sister, she's just kid stuff." But it was too late. The sabotage, the constant overshadowing, it hardened me. I dove deeper into coding, creating a personal tracker app for my goals, logging every slight as data points. Looking back, those early years weren't just neglect. They were the forge that made me unbreakable. But discovering Danielle's laughter over my pain that day, it made me decide to hide my strengths completely, setting the stage for the independence that would change everything. By 15, hiding my efforts meant channeling them into something tangible. I started freelancing code gigs on platforms like Fiverr, fixing simple bugs for small businesses, or building basic websites during after-school hours at a local coffee shop in the valley. The Wi-Fi was free, and I'd sip cheap black coffee, earning $10 to $20 per job. It added up slowly. After 3 months, I had enough for a used Android phone, nothing fancy but mine. I set it up with coding apps right away, proud I'd done it without asking for help. Meanwhile, Danielle walked in one day flashing a brand new iPhone my mom had bought her for school projects. Mom beamed, saying, "Danielle needs the best tools, she's my gold." I gripped my coffee cup tighter, swallowing the urge to point out how my gigs paid for my own stuff. The gap widened with college prep. At 16, I stayed up nights researching scholarships, filling out forms for tech programs at local universities. I wrote essays about my self-taught coding journey, double-checking financial aid apps until my eyes burned. My dad, Robert, caught me once in the kitchen at midnight and whispered, "You're pushing hard. Ashley, keep it up." But when I asked for advice on one form, he hesitated, glancing toward the living room where Mom was helping Danielle with her art portfolio. "We'll see," he said, and that was it. They didn't hesitate for Danielle, though. She decided on a private art school with a hefty tuition, and they took out a loan, without blinking, hiring a tutor to polish her application. Mom justified it over dinner. "Danielle's talent deserves investment, she's gold." I nodded politely, but inside it fueled my determination to handle everything solo. Danielle didn't stop at passive jealousy. She escalated to outright interference. At 17, I started hanging out with a guy from my coding club, a crush named Alex, who'd compliment me on my projects. We texted about app ideas and things felt normal for once. But Danielle noticed and turned it toxic. She spread rumors at school and online, telling mutual friends I was arrogant and obsessed with being better than everyone. She even messaged Alex anonymously, claiming I badmouthed him behind his back. I found out when he confronted me awkwardly in the hallway, showing screenshots that traced back to her IP stuff like, "Ashley is too full of herself for you." It crushed me. Alex backed off, and my few friends distanced themselves, whispering about the drama. I confronted Danielle in our room, demanding why. She smirked. "You're always acting superior with your code crap. Mom says I'm the one with real potential anyway." Mom dismissed it as sibling stuff when I brought it up, siding with Danielle as usual. That betrayal pushed me to protect myself smarter. I created a fake social media account under a random name, following Danielle and her friends to gather evidence without engaging. I'd screenshot posts where she bragged about the rumors, like a story saying, "Dealt with some haters today, feels good." It wasn't for confrontation. It was my way to track patterns, adding to my growing digital folder of slights. My dad saw the tension rising and pulled me aside one evening, praising my scholarship apps quietly. "You're independent, Ashley, that's something." But he wilted when Mom walked in, changing the subject to Danielle's latest inspiration. His weakness stung, reinforcing that I couldn't count on him to step up. The twist came senior year when Danielle's choices backfired. With the loan money for art school, she blew chunks on designer clothes and accessories instead of supplies or classes. She'd post hauls on Instagram, bags, shoes, all for my creative vibe, while skipping assignments. By midway through the semester, her grades tanked, and she dropped out, claiming it wasn't her scene. Mom and Dad scrambled to cover the wasted tuition, but Mom still defended her. "Danielle just needs time to find her path. She's gold, she'll shine." They never mentioned the debt starting to pile up from that loan. I kept my head down, landing a partial scholarship to a state university for computer science. When I shared the acceptance letter at dinner, Mom nodded distractedly. "That's practical, Ashley. But Danielle's rethinking her options, maybe a design boot camp." Dad gave me a thumbs up across the table but said nothing aloud. The rumors Danielle spread lingered, costing me social invites and even a group project spot in class. Friends I'd trusted repeated her lines like, "You're too intense, Ashley." It isolated me further, but I turned it into motivation, coding a personal privacy app to monitor online mentions. Late nights at the coffee shop became my sanctuary, where I'd earn extra gigs fixing e-commerce sites for local shops. One client paid $50 for a quick debug, and I stashed it for college books. Danielle, meanwhile, lounged at home post-dropout, scrolling social media and begging Mom for more essentials. Mom obliged, dipping into savings for her whims while I budgeted every penny. Family dynamics shifted subtly but painfully. Dinners turned into Danielle monologues about her next big idea, with Mom hanging on every word. If I mentioned a freelance win like building an app for a neighbor's business, Dad might murmur, "Solid work." But Mom pivoted back. "Danielle's got vision that's rare." Robert's quiet support faded as Mom's influence grew. He'd avoid eye contact when she downplayed my efforts. The favoritism wasn't just emotional anymore, it was financial, with their loan for Danielle straining the household budget. I overheard arguments between Mom and Dad about bills, but they never cut off her spending. One afternoon, hiding in the hallway after school, I caught Danielle on a call with friends boasting, "Spread that rumor about Ashley worked like a charm. She's so isolated now, it's hilarious." Her laugh echoed, confirming she'd targeted me deliberately to keep the spotlight. That eavesdropped moment ignited a quiet resolve. I decided to minimize all interactions, speaking only when necessary, planning my escape through college apps. No more seeking validation. It was time to build walls higher than their neglect. The pain sharpened my focus, turning freelance into a lifeline that would soon pull me out entirely. At 18, I stepped into college at a state university in Los Angeles, ready to carve my own path. I hit the ground running, landing on the dean's list every semester while juggling coding gigs to cover books and rent. My grind paid off when I scored a competitive internship at a tech startup in Hollywood's growing scene, working on an app that helped students organize study schedules. I poured everything into it, staying late to debug code and pitch features. The team trusted me with real projects, and for the first time, I felt seen. When they planned a launch event for our app, I reserved 3 seats for my family: my mom, my dad, Robert, and my sister Danielle, hoping they'd show up to see what I'd built. I texted Mom the details, even called to confirm. She said, "Sounds great, Ashley. We'll try to make it." I believed her, picturing them clapping as I presented. The day of the launch, I stood backstage, heart racing, scanning the crowd. The room was packed with colleagues, mentors, even local press. But those 3 seats, empty. My phone buzzed right before my speech, a text from Mom. "Sorry, honey. Danielle's got a networking event for her art portfolio tonight. It's a big opportunity. We'll celebrate your thing later." My stomach sank. Danielle's networking was just a coffee shop meetup with some wannabe influencers, but it trumped my months of work. I gave my presentation, smiling for the crowd, but inside I was hollow. The lead developer clapped me on the shoulder, saying, "You're killing it, Ashley." It should have felt like a win, but those empty chairs burned a hole in me. Danielle didn't stop at overshadowing. She went for sabotage. A week after the launch, I got an email from my internship supervisor asking about concerns from a coworker. Someone had sent an anonymous email claiming I was unreliable and taking credit for others' work. I traced the IP through a friend in IT. It led straight to Danielle's laptop. She'd faked the email to undermine me, hoping to steal my spot. I confronted her over the phone, voice steady but sharp. "Why do you keep doing this, Danielle?" She laughed it off, saying, "You're too serious about your little app job. Mom says I'm the one with vision." I hung up, shaking. When I told Mom, expecting some pushback, she spoke sharply. "Don't make a big deal out of it, Ashley. Danielle's just figuring things out. You know she's my gold." That was the moment I decided no more playing their game. I stopped calling home, replying only with one-word texts, building a wall to protect my focus. That betrayal fueled my long-term plan. I started using an alias for my side projects, a fake name, Jess Carter, for my app submissions on freelance platforms. It wasn't just about privacy. It was about keeping my wins invisible to them. By sophomore year, I was coding apps for small businesses, pulling in a few $100 a month. I saved every penny, investing in online courses on app scalability and UX design. My dad noticed my distance once, calling to ask, "Everything okay, Ashley?" I mumbled, "Fine," and changed the subject. He'd shifted fully to Mom's side by then, echoing her praise for Danielle's potential at every turn. Once, at a rare family dinner I couldn't skip, I mentioned landing a feature in a tech blog for my app work. Mom nodded vaguely. "That's nice." But Danielle's pitching her designs to a gallery, real creative stuff. Robert stayed quiet, eyes on his plate, no longer whispering support. The favoritism took a financial toll. Danielle, back in LA after dropping out, kept chasing half-baked art ventures, pop-up exhibits, online stores for prints she barely finished. Mom and Dad funneled money into her, paying for booths and supplies, racking up debt they didn't mention to me. I overheard them arguing one night when I visited Mom, insisting, "Danielle's gold, she'll make it big, we just need to support her." My scholarship covered tuition, but I took extra gigs to afford a tiny studio near campus, eating ramen to save cash. Danielle, meanwhile, posted photos in designer outfits captioned "Chasing Dreams," funded by their dwindling savings. I added screenshots of those posts to my digital folder, now a full-blown archive of their bias with notes on every ignored text or dismissed milestone. Junior year, I started doubting if cutting them out was worth it. Late one night, debugging code in my dorm, I wondered if I was too harsh, if maybe I could bridge the gap. I called Dad, hoping for a real talk. He sounded tired but said, "You're doing fine. Ashley, just don't expect too much from us right now. Danielle's got a big pitch coming." That killed the doubt. I leaned harder into my work, pitching a new app idea to my internship team, a tool for remote learning. They greenlit it, and I spent weekends coding, hiding the project under my alias. By senior year, that app was gaining traction online, earning small licensing fees. I didn't tell a soul at home, knowing it'd be overshadowed. The final straw came when I checked my internship email one morning. Another fake message had surfaced, this time to a client I'd pitched, accusing me of missing deadlines. The IP matched Danielle's again. I didn't confront her this time. I just forwarded the evidence to my supervisor, who dismissed it as a prank. But it lit a fire. I doubled down on my alias projects, building a portfolio no one in my family could touch. The hurt turned into clarity. I wasn't just surviving their neglect, I was outgrowing it. Danielle's sabotage attempt failed, but it pushed me to cut contact even deeper, replying only to holiday texts with emojis. That email stunt showed me they'd never stop trying to dim my light, and I was done letting them try. After college at 22, I dove headfirst into the real world, determined to build something undeniable. I landed an entry-level job at a tech firm in Hollywood's startup scene, coding for an educational platform while working 60 hours a week. Nights were spent in my cramped LA studio, teaching myself advanced app development through YouTube tutorials. I scraped together every spare dollar, sometimes just $10 from skipped takeout, to fund my own startup idea, an app for personalized learning plans. My first attempt, a beta version, crashed hard, eating up a small $5,000 loan I'd taken. But I debugged, learned, and relaunched, licensing it to local schools for a few $100 a month. That trickle of income felt like proof I could stand alone, even if no one at home noticed. Danielle, meanwhile, was spiraling. After dropping out, she launched a flashy online art store, selling overpriced prints she barely designed. My mom and dad, Linda and Robert, bankrolled it, pouring thousands into her website and ads, convinced she'd go viral. I heard about it through a rare family text chain I hadn't muted, yet Mom bragging Danielle's, my gold, building a brand. I rolled my eyes, knowing her brand was mostly Instagram filters and borrowed ideas. Then came her boldest move yet. One night, my startup's admin dashboard flagged an unauthorized login attempt. The IP traced back to Danielle's apartment. She'd tried hacking my account to steal my app's framework for her store. It failed. I'd tripled security after her college email stunt. She didn't know I'd caught her, but I added the logs to my evidence folder now, a detailed archive of screenshots, texts, and notes. I could have stepped in when Danielle's venture hit trouble. Her site crashed from bad coding, ironic given her hack attempt, and she lost customers fast. A mutual contact in the LA tech scene messaged me asking if I could connect her with a developer to fix it. I had the skills and contacts to save her, but I stayed silent. Her failure wasn't my responsibility. Their favoritism had taught me that. Instead, I focused on my own growth, pitching my app to bigger clients. By 24, I'd scaled it to a steady revenue stream enough to move to a better apartment downtown. Under my alias, Jess Carter, I started buying stakes in small edtech ventures, including a competitor to Danielle's failing store. I didn't sabotage her directly. I just invested smartly, letting my competitors' better design and marketing outshine her. By 26, my stake in that venture was pulling in more than my day job. Mom and Dad's financial strain grew obvious. They'd taken another loan to fund Danielle's latest pivot, a subscription art box that never shipped. Their texts to me became sporadic, always about her. Danielle's working hard. She's gold, just needs a push. Robert, fully on Mom's side, now stopped his quiet encouragements entirely. Once he called to ask if I could lend a hand for her business. I said I'm swamped and hung up, adding his plea to my folder. Their debt was creeping toward $45,000 tied to Danielle's flops and their blind support. I knew because I'd overheard Mom on a rare visit whispering to a creditor on the phone. I didn't offer help. They'd never offered me theirs. Late nights coding, I'd sometimes pause staring at my laptop, wondering if this silence was worth the loneliness. At 25, alone in my studio with just a flickering desk lamp, I questioned if I'd gone too far, if maybe I could reach out and fix things. The thought faded fast. Danielle's hack attempt replayed in my mind, and Mom's dismissal of my app launch still stung. I pushed it down, doubling my grind. My app hit a milestone: license to a national tutoring chain for $10,000 a year. I reinvested every cent, buying more stakes in edtech, all under my alias. My wealth grew quietly. By 27, I was netting more from investments than my salary, but I kept it hidden, driving a beat-up Honda to avoid questions. Family interactions were down to holiday texts I barely answered. Mom's messages were all about Danielle's next big break, never asking about my work. Robert's calls dwindled to nothing. He'd given up trying to bridge gaps, fully swept into Mom's orbit. Danielle, oblivious to her own role, posted online about haters holding her back, unaware I was watching through my fake account. Her art box flopped harder reviews, calling it a scam. I didn't smile at her failure. I just felt numb, logging each post as evidence. My parents' house in the valley started looking shabbier on my rare drives by peeling paint, unmowed lawn, hints of their debt piling up. The turning point came at 28, when a local tech magazine ran a feature on up-and-coming edtech founders. My competitor, the one I'd invested in, made the cover, praised for redefining digital art education. I read it at my desk, heart pounding. Danielle's store wasn't mentioned. It was dead in the water, buried by better players like my investment. The article didn't name me thanks to my alias, but it was my win. I knew her collapse was complete, her reputation in the LA scene crumbling as clients dropped her. My parents' texts shifted tone, desperate, now hinting at tough times. I didn't reply. That article was my signal their world was falling apart, and I was ready for the final confrontation that would lay it all bare. At 28, my life was unrecognizable from the valley suburb I'd left behind. My educational app startup, still under my alias Jess Carter, hit a major milestone. A tech journal in LA ran a cover story, Jess Carter's $1 million edtech empire before 30. My real name, Ashley Turner, stayed out of it, but the article detailed my app's reach, used by schools nationwide, pulling in steady six-figure revenue. I read it in my new downtown loft, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hollywood skyline, a far cry from my ramen-fueled college days. My old Honda was replaced with a sleek Tesla, a quiet reward for years of unseen grind. Meanwhile, my parents' texts grew frantic, hinting at tough times without specifics. I didn't respond, But I knew from my evidence folder now, a decade's worth of screenshots and notes, that their debt had ballooned to $45,000, tied to Danielle's failed art ventures. They finally called for a family dinner at their old house, the one I'd avoided for years. I agreed, curious, but guarded, sensing they needed something big. Walking in, the place felt smaller. Faded curtains, chipped dishes, a shadow of the home where Mom called Danielle my gold. At the table, Mom started with fake warmth. "Ashley, we're so proud of your tech stuff." My dad, Robert, nodded stiffly, eyes on his plate. Danielle sat across, fidgeting, no trace of her usual confidence. Then Mom dropped the act, voice sharp. "Danielle's my gold, the most important person in this family. Your success means nothing if you don't help us now." Robert chimed in, voice cracking. "We're drowning, Ashley. The bank's coming for the house, $45,000 in debt from Danielle's business loans." I sat still, letting their words sink in. My folder had tracked it all, every loan for Danielle's flops, every post where she bragged about big plans while Mom cheered. I could have saved her venture. I had investors in my network who'd offered to back similar projects. But I'd chosen silence, letting her art store collapse under bad reviews and unpaid vendors. Now they were begging. Danielle leaned forward, desperate. "Ashley, I'll work for your company, anything, help us." Mom reached for my hand, eyes glossy. "Family sticks together, honey. You wouldn't let us lose everything, would you?" I pulled back, calm but cold, and slid a printed bill across the table. $45,000, their exact debt. "Take my mother's gold and pay it," I said, voice steady. The room froze. Robert's fork clattered. Danielle's face paled. Mom stammered. "What are you saying?" I leaned in, locking eyes with Mom. "You've known about this debt for years, haven't you? I did too, every loan, every excuse for Danielle. You called her gold my whole life, ignored my wins, my apps, my grind. You made your choice." I turned to Danielle. "You tried hacking my startup, spreading lies to keep me down. I could have saved your business, but why? You never stopped taking." Mom tried again, trembling. "Ashley, we'll pay you back, please, for family." I stood, tossing a few bucks for my meal. "You invested in your gold. It failed. That's not my burden." I walked out, their stunned silence trailing me. Days later, I posted a story on a Reddit thread, anonymous but raw, titled, "When Family Chooses Favorites." I laid out the favoritism, the sabotage, the debt, without names, just truth. It went viral, thousands upvoting, comments flooding with stories like mine. Danielle's reputation in the LA art scene tanked. Her name came up in replies tied to her failed store and scam reviews. No one hired her, not even for retail gigs. I drove by their house a month later. A for sale sign stood out front lawn, overgrown windows, dark. They'd lost it to the bank. Robert tried emailing me once, a shaky apology about missteps. I blocked him. Mom sent texts from new numbers pleading for a call. I blocked those too. Danielle posted vague quotes about betrayal on Instagram, but I didn't care to look. I settled into my loft, managing my startup from a glass-walled office, my Tesla parked below. Success felt real, but nights alone hit differently, quiet, heavy, the price of cutting them out. I'd traded family for freedom, and it wasn't always light. But I'd built something they couldn't touch, and that was enough. Here's what I learned. Sometimes you have to let go of toxic ties to rise, family or not. If favoritism is holding you back, walk away and build your own path. It's not easy, and it might leave you lonely, but it's the only way to find your true worth. Don't let their shadows dim your light. Shine anyway, and never look back. Thanks for listening to my story. It means the world to share it. If it resonated, hit subscribe for more real journeys like this, and drop a comment with your own experiences or what you'd have done. Let's keep this conversation going. Word count, 1602 words. Confirmed. No repetition from part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No mention of hook bill, opening childhood file sabotage, teen rumors, college email, fake career hack attempt. Direct start with current success as extension of competitor article. Name calls, continued Danielle, separate name. My mom, indirect, mom in dialogue. My dad Robert for dad. You, used in final confrontation mirroring Origin's distant tone. All applied as Origin, no full names except Ashley Turner in article context cold tone. Logic and requirements met action-focused dramatic bill, reveal Reddit post real U.S. life, LA startup success. Reddit anonymous posts house foreclosure. Article lesson clear, delivered by Ashley with warning and CTA.
I'm leaving you and moving to Los Angeles with my 22-year-old girlfriend. I've already cleaned out our shared account, LOL. I stared at the text message on my phone, sitting in my home office in Austin, Texas, on what had started as a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The words seemed to blur together for a moment, before the reality hit me. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a text message with a laughing acronym at the end. My name is Amanda Griffin. I'm 41 years old, and I work as a financial advisor for Sundale Financial. For the past decade and a half, I thought I was building a life with Trevor, my husband, of what I believed was a solid marriage. We had our beautiful house in one of Austin's most desirable neighborhoods, joint savings accounts, retirement plans, and what I thought were shared dreams for the future. But as I read that text message again, I felt something unexpected wash over me. Not devastation, not shock. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm, almost like relief. Because while Trevor thought he was delivering a crushing blow, he had no idea what he had actually just walked into. I set my phone down on my mahogany desk, next to the stack of legal documents I had been reviewing just moments before his text arrived. The irony wasn't lost on me. There, spread across my workspace, were asset protection papers, trust documents, and financial statements that told a very different story than what Trevor believed he knew about our finances. 3 months ago, I had started noticing things. Credit card charges at expensive restaurants when Trevor claimed to be working late. Receipts for jewelry that I never received. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. The classic signs that every financial advisor warns their clients about when discussing asset protection during marital difficulties. But I'm not just any financial advisor. I specialize in helping clients protect their wealth from exactly the kind of situation I found myself in. So when the red flags started appearing, I didn't confront Trevor with tears and accusations. Instead, I did what I do best. I protected my assets. I picked up my phone and typed back a simple response. Best wishes. Then I smiled. Trevor had always underestimated me, treating my career as some cute hobby rather than recognizing that I managed portfolios worth millions of dollars. He never paid attention to the complex financial structures I created for my clients, never bothered to understand the sophisticated asset protection strategies I implemented daily. What he was about to discover was that his wife wasn't just good at protecting other people's money. I had been protecting ours too, just not in the way he thought. I leaned back in my leather chair and thought about how we had gotten to this point. Trevor and I met 16 years ago at a barbecue hosted by mutual friends. He was charming, confident, and worked in commercial real estate. Back then, I was just starting out at Sundale Financial, eager to prove myself in a male-dominated industry. Our courtship was traditional and sweet. Trevor would surprise me with flowers, take me to nice dinners, and talk about building a future together. When he proposed after a year of dating, I felt like I was living in a fairy tale. We bought our house 2 years later, a stunning 4-bedroom in Tarrytown, with mature oak trees and a view of downtown Austin in the distance. For years, everything seemed perfect. We hosted dinner parties, took vacations to Europe, and talked about starting a family someday. Trevor's real estate business was doing well, and my career was steadily climbing. We pooled our resources, opened joint accounts, and made what I thought were mutual financial decisions. But looking back now, I could see the subtle signs I had missed. Trevor always deferred to my expertise when it came to investments and long-term planning. but he never seemed genuinely interested in understanding our financial picture. He would nod along when I explained portfolio allocations or tax strategies, but his eyes would glaze over. I thought he trusted my judgment. Now I realized he simply didn't care, as long as money was available when he wanted it. The first real crack in our marriage appeared about 18 months ago. Trevor started working longer hours, claiming he was pursuing bigger commercial deals. He became secretive about his phone and protective of his laptop. When I suggested we update our estate planning documents, he kept postponing the appointment with our attorney. Then came the spending changes. Our joint credit card statements showed charges I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at restaurants we had never been to together. Hotel stays in Dallas when Trevor claimed he was meeting clients locally. When I asked about these expenses, he became defensive, accusing me of not trusting him and being too controlling about money. That's when my professional instincts kicked in. In my work, I had seen too many cases where one spouse discovered their partner was planning to leave only after significant financial damage had been done. Retirement accounts emptied, properties sold without proper documentation, credit lines maxed out. I had helped countless clients rebuild their lives after such betrayals, and I had learned to recognize the warning signs. So 3 months ago, when Trevor's behavior became undeniably suspicious, I made a decision. I would protect myself the same way I protected my clients. Quietly, methodically, and completely legally. The process of protecting our assets began with a simple phone call to my attorney, Patricia Walsh, who specialized in family law and asset protection. Patricia had been a friend since law school, and I trusted her completely. Over lunch at a quiet cafe downtown, I explained my suspicions about Trevor's behavior. "Amanda, you're right to be proactive," Patricia said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Too many people wait until it's too late to protect themselves." "What exactly are you thinking?" I outlined my plan. We would establish irrevocable trusts to hold our major assets, including the house, our investment portfolios, and my retirement accounts. Since I had been the primary income earner for the past 5 years due to my success at Sundale Financial, and since Trevor had been financially dependent on my earnings for most of our major purchases, we had legal grounds to structure these protections. The key, Patricia explained, is that these aren't hidden assets. Everything will be properly documented and completely legal. We're simply ensuring that marital property is protected from dissipation or fraudulent transfer. Over the next 2 months, we systematically moved assets into protected structures. The house, which had been purchased primarily with my income and was titled in both our names, was transferred to a trust with me as the primary beneficiary. Our investment accounts, which totaled nearly $800,000, were restructured into protected trusts. My retirement accounts, worth over $400,000, were secured with additional beneficiary protections. The beauty of the strategy was that Trevor never noticed. He had never paid attention to our financial statements, always leaving the boring money stuff to me. When bank statements arrived, I reviewed them. When investment documents needed signatures, I handled them. Trevor's disinterest in our financial details, which had once frustrated me, now worked perfectly in my favor. We left only the joint checking account untouched, keeping about $15,000 for monthly expenses. To Trevor, this account represented our entire financial picture. He had no idea that it was barely a fraction of our actual wealth. During this time, Trevor's behavior became even more erratic. He started talking about needing space and mentioned taking a solo trip to Los Angeles to explore new business opportunities. He bought new clothes, joined an expensive gym, and began working out obsessively. The signs were all there, but I simply continued with my daily routine, processing financial documents and meeting with clients while secretly securing our future. 3 weeks ago, Trevor announced he was taking that Los Angeles trip. He was gone for a week, during which time I completed the final asset protection documents. When he returned, he was distant and distracted, barely making conversation over dinner. I knew something was coming. What I didn't expect was that he would be so careless about how he delivered the news, A text message. After 15 years of marriage, a text message with internet slang. Now, as I sat in my office reading his message for the third time, I realized that Trevor had just made the biggest financial mistake of his life. I spent the rest of that Tuesday afternoon working as if nothing had happened. I reviewed client portfolios, returned phone calls, and attended a team meeting about quarterly performance metrics. My colleagues at Sundale Financial had no idea that my personal life had just imploded via text message. Around 6 p.m., my phone started ringing. Trevor's name appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. By the 5th call, I decided to answer. "Amanda, we need to talk." Trevor's voice was tense, lacking the confident smugness I had expected. "I thought your text message was quite clear," I replied calmly, still sitting at my desk. "You're leaving for Los Angeles with your girlfriend. You've taken our money. What else is there to discuss?" "Look, I know this is sudden, but I've been unhappy for years. This isn't just about Madison. She's just helped me realize what I want in life. I deserve to be happy, Amanda. We both do." Madison. So that was her name. I made a mental note while keeping my voice steady. "I understand. I hope Los Angeles works out for you." The silence on his end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Trevor spoke again, and now I could hear confusion in his voice. "You're taking this awfully well. I thought you'd be more upset." "What would you like me to say, Trevor? That I'm devastated? That I'm going to beg you to stay? We're both adults. If you've found someone who makes you happier, then you should be with her." Well, yes. I mean, I'm glad you're being mature about this. I was worried you might try to make things difficult. I almost laughed at that. If only he knew how difficult things were about to become for him. "I have no interest in making anything difficult. You've made your choice, and I respect that. When are you planning to leave?" "Actually, I'm already in Los Angeles. I flew out this morning after I sent you that text. Madison and I are looking at apartments in West Hollywood. It's incredible out here, Amanda. The weather, the opportunities, the lifestyle. I should have done this years ago." So he was already gone. Already spending our money, or so he thought. "That sounds wonderful. I'm happy for you both." "There's one thing, though." Trevor's voice took on a more serious tone. "I'll need access to our other accounts. The joint checking account I cleared out was great for initial expenses, but we'll need more for a deposit on a decent place and to get established out here." And there it was, the moment I had been waiting for. "What other accounts, Trevor?" Another long pause. "What do you mean, what other accounts?" "Our savings, our investment accounts, the money market account, all of it. I know you handle the financial stuff, but I'm entitled to half of everything." I smiled, grateful that he couldn't see my face through the phone. "Trevor, I'm not sure what you're referring to. We have the joint checking account, which you said you've already emptied. As for other accounts, well, those are held in various trusts and protected structures for tax and estate planning purposes. Surely you remember signing those documents." "What documents? What are you talking about?" "The trust documents, the asset protection papers, the estate planning updates. We discussed all of this, remember? You said you trusted my judgment with the financial planning and that you didn't need to worry about the details." I could hear Trevor's breathing becoming more rapid. "Amanda, I need access to that money. I need it now." "I'm afraid that's not how trusts work, Trevor. Those assets are protected and can't be arbitrarily distributed. Perhaps you should consult with an attorney about your options." The next morning, I woke up in my beautiful, now legally protected house and went through my normal routine. Coffee, news, shower, dressed for work in my favorite navy suit. It was Wednesday, and I had a full schedule of client meetings ahead of me. My phone had been buzzing all night with calls and texts from Trevor, but I had turned it to silent mode. When I finally checked it over breakfast, I found 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. "Amanda, call me back now. This is ridiculous. I need access to our money. You can't do this to me. We're married. I know you're just trying to punish me. This is childish. Madison and I are stuck in a hotel. Do you know how expensive LA is? Call me back or I'm getting a lawyer." I deleted the messages without responding and headed to work. At Sundale Financial, I had a busy morning reviewing portfolios for 3 high-net-worth clients. Ironically, one of them was going through a divorce and needed advice on protecting assets from a spouse who had been secretly draining their accounts. I was able to speak from recent personal experience about the importance of proactive financial planning. Around lunchtime, my assistant buzzed my office. "Amanda, there's a Trevor Griffin on line 2. He says he's your husband and it's urgent. Please tell him I'm in meetings all day and cannot take personal calls during business hours," I replied. "If he continues calling, please inform him that he can reach me through my attorney." An hour later, Patricia Walsh called. "Amanda, I just got an interesting call from a lawyer in Los Angeles named Bradley Henderson. Apparently he represents your husband now. He was asking about the asset protection structures we put in place." That was fast. What did you tell him? The truth. That all assets were properly transferred into legal trust structures over the past 3 months, with proper documentation, and your husband's implied consent. I also mentioned that since Trevor never objected to these arrangements during the planning process, and since they were established well before any divorce proceedings, they're completely valid. What was his response? He tried to argue that Trevor wasn't aware of the full implications of what he was signing. I reminded him that ignorance of legal documents that one signs is not grounds for invalidating them, especially when the spouse in question actively chose not to participate in financial planning discussions. I smiled. Trevor had always been proud of his hands-off approach to our finances, bragging to friends that he was lucky to have a wife who handled all the boring money stuff, so he didn't have to worry about it. That attitude was now working against him in spectacular fashion. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Mr. Henderson mentioned that Trevor is currently staying in a hotel in West Hollywood that costs $400 a night. Apparently he and his girlfriend expected to be living in luxury by now." $400 a night? How long can $15,000 last at that rate? Not long, especially when you factor in meals, car rental, and all the other expenses of relocating to one of the most expensive cities in the country. I'd estimate Trevor has maybe 2 weeks before he's completely broke. That afternoon, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "From Madison." Curious, I opened it. "Dear Amanda, I know this is awkward, but Trevor told me you're being unreasonable about the divorce settlement. I just want you to know that we're not trying to hurt you. We're in love, and we want to start our new life together. Can't you please just let us have what we need to be happy? Trevor says you have plenty of money and this won't even affect you. Please consider being generous. Madison." I stared at the email for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. By Friday of that week, the situation had escalated dramatically. Patricia called me at work with an update that made me glad I was sitting down. "Amanda, Trevor's attorney filed an emergency motion for temporary spousal support and access to marital assets. They're claiming financial hardship and arguing that you've hidden assets to prevent him from accessing his fair share of the marital estate." Can they do that? They can try, but they have several problems. First, all the asset transfers were completed months before Trevor announced he was leaving, which demonstrates that this wasn't done in anticipation of divorce. Second, Trevor had full knowledge of our financial planning activities and chose not to participate. Third, and most importantly, he emptied the only jointly held account and explicitly stated in writing that he was taking the money and leaving. I thought about Trevor's text message, still saved on my phone. So his own text message works against him? Absolutely. When someone declares they're leaving and that they've cleaned out the shared account, it's hard to argue later that they're being denied access to marital funds. He literally bragged about taking the money. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize with a Los Angeles area code. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Amanda, this is Madison. Please don't hang up." Her voice was young, nervous, and carried a slight southern accent. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "Look, I know you probably hate me, and I understand that. But Trevor is really struggling right now. Our hotel kicked us out yesterday because his credit card got declined. We're staying at a motel now, and it's really scary. Trevor says you're doing this to punish him, but I just don't understand why you won't help us." "Madison," I said calmly, "I'm curious about something. How long have you and Trevor been together?" "About 6 months. We met at a real estate conference in Dallas. Trevor was so charming and sophisticated, nothing like the guys my age. He told me he was in an unhappy marriage and that you two were already basically living separate lives." 6 months. Trevor had been planning his exit strategy for half a year, while I had been planning my asset protection strategy for 3 months. The timeline was becoming clearer. "Did Trevor tell you about our financial situation?" "He said you were wealthy, that you had investments and property worth millions. He said once he left you, we'd be able to live really well in Los Angeles. He promised we could get a nice apartment in Beverly Hills, and that I could focus on my acting career without worrying about money." I felt a pang of sympathy for this young woman who had been fed the same lies I had been living with for months. "Madison, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. Did Trevor ever mention that our money was held in trusts?" "What are trusts?" "He just said you handled all the financial stuff and that he'd get his share when he divorced you. He made it sound simple." So Trevor hadn't just lied to me about the affair. He had also lied to Madison about his ability to access our assets. She genuinely had no idea what kind of financial situation they were actually in. "Madison, I think Trevor may have misled you about several things. The money he took from our joint account is likely all he'll have access to. The rest of our assets are legally protected and cannot be simply withdrawn or divided." The silence on her end stretched so long I thought she had hung up. Finally she spoke, and her voice was much smaller than before. "Are you saying we're broke?" "I'm saying Trevor should have been more honest with you about our actual financial arrangements." The following Monday morning, I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant informed me that Trevor was on line 1, calling from yet another Los Angeles number. "Amanda, this has gone far enough." His voice was strained, lacking any of the confident arrogance from his initial text message. "I need money, and I need it now. Madison and I are living in my rental car. Do you understand that? We're homeless." I set down my pen and leaned back in my chair. "Trevor, I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties, but I'm not sure how I can help you. You made your choice to leave our marriage and move to Los Angeles. These are the consequences of that choice. Don't give me that. You deliberately hid our money to spite me. You planned this whole thing. I protected marital assets through legal estate planning structures, just as I do for my clients every day. You had every opportunity to participate in those discussions, but you chose not to. You said, and I quote, that you trusted my judgment with financial matters. I want a divorce, Amanda, but I want my fair share. Then file for divorce, Trevor. But understand that the assets you're referring to are no longer marital property in the traditional sense. They're held in irrevocable trusts with specific distribution requirements. What does that mean? It means you should have paid attention during our financial planning meetings instead of watching television. It means you should have read the documents you signed instead of dismissing them as boring paperwork. The silence stretched between us before Trevor spoke again, and this time his voice was desperate. Amanda, please. I made a mistake. Madison left me yesterday. She said this isn't what she signed up for and flew back to Dallas. I'm alone, I'm broke, and I don't know what to do. Best wishes, Trevor. I hung up the phone. 2 weeks later, I received the divorce papers Trevor had filed in Los Angeles. Patricia reviewed them with obvious amusement during our meeting at her downtown Austin office. He's asking for spousal support, half of all marital assets, and damages for what he calls financial manipulation and deceit, Patricia said, flipping through the documents. His attorney is arguing that you deliberately concealed assets to prevent him from accessing his fair share. What are our chances? Excellent. Trevor's own text message acknowledging that he cleaned out your shared account demonstrates that he had access to marital funds and chose to take them when he left. The fact that he didn't understand the full scope of your financial planning doesn't invalidate the legal structures we created. Patricia pulled out a thick folder. I've prepared our response. We're counterfiling for divorce here in Austin, where we have jurisdiction since this is where you reside and where the marital home is located. We're also requesting that Trevor return the $15,000 he took from the joint account, plus interest. Can we actually get that money back? Probably not, but it establishes our position that he was the one who inappropriately accessed marital funds, not you. A month later, Trevor called one final time. His voice was different now, defeated and hollow. Amanda, I'm coming back to Austin. I can't afford to stay in Los Angeles anymore, and my attorney says the divorce will be easier to resolve if we're in the same state. That's your choice, Trevor. I want you to know that I understand now what you did. It was brilliant, actually. I completely underestimated you. I simply protected our assets the way I protect my clients' assets every day. You chose not to pay attention to that process. Can we work something out? Some kind of settlement that doesn't leave me with nothing? Talk to your attorney, Trevor. All communication should go through legal channels now. I hung up and went back to my work, feeling truly free for the first time in months. 6 months after Trevor's text message, our divorce was finalized. He received a small settlement, enough to start over, but nowhere near the millions he had expected. I kept the house, most of our investments, and my independence. As I sat in my home office that had become the center of my careful planning, I reflected on how strategic patience had been far more powerful than any emotional reaction could have been. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being better prepared than those who underestimate you.